Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Nigeria has been officially removed from the Financial Action Task Force FATF grey list, marking a major milestone in the nation's economic reform journey and reaffirming its global commitment to transparency, integrity and financial accountability. Now, the decision announced at the FATF plenary in Paris follows 2 years of sustained reforms and collaboration across government and financial institutions. This, to Nigeria, is a decisive signal to investors that Nigeria is open, compliant, and ready for deeper financial integration. Now, this development strengthens Nigeria's standing within the global financial system, restoring international confidence and unlocking opportunities for foreign investment, trade finance, and private sector growth by addressing key deficiencies in anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing frameworks. Tonight, NTA Tuesday Live will focus on exit from the Financial Action Task Force, impact on global image and the economy. But before we go into the discussion, let's get to see this report put together by correspondent Musa Baba Aliyu.
List, officially termed jurisdictions under increased monitoring, is maintained by the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, an intergovernmental body that establishes global standards to combat money laundering, terrorist financing, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Countries are added to the grey list when identified as having weaknesses in their anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing frameworks. Nigeria was placed on the FATF grey list on February 24, 2023, following a mutual evaluation and revealed deficiencies in areas such as transparency of beneficial ownership, oversight of non-financial sectors like real estate and legal services, and the effectiveness of law enforcement in prosecuting money laundering and terrorist financing cases. The current administration committed to an action plan to address these issues, leading to Nigeria's removal from the list on October 24, 2025.
A record of 4 countries have been removed from the grey list. The countries are Burkina Faso, Mozambique, Nigeria, and South Africa. Some of the actions taken by these jurisdictions include: Nigeria now has a stronger interagency coordination. Mozambique has improved financial intelligence sharing. And Burkina Faso has enhanced financial oversight of financial institutions and gatekeepers.
The Global Watchdog Agency noted that Nigeria demonstrated significant progress through reforms, including enhanced interagency coordination and improved financial intelligence sharing.
These transformations will help better protect communities that are harmed by crime and corruption, those living in fear of terrorist attacks, families with life savings drained by fraud and cybercrime.
The country's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has recovered more than 566.3 billion naira illicit funds and more than 1,500 properties acquired through fraudulent means in the last 2 years in the country. Nigeria's exit from the grey list after approximately 2 years and 8 months is expected to boost investor confidence and facilitate smoother cross-border financial transactions. Musa Baba Aliyu.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's introduce our guests. I'd like to welcome to this program Felix Obiamalu, General Counsel, Legal Services Sector, the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIU. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tober.
Right.
It's my pleasure.
Let me also welcome John Oko-Ode, Divisional Head, Education and Community Engagement Division of the ICPC. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We'd like to welcome to this program after quite some time. Good to see you again. Kelvin Emmanuel, an economist. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege.
Thank you. Let me also welcome to this program Ogbonna Ukuku, an investment and economic development expert. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And also joining us tonight, another of our regulars, Dr. Niyi Akinshiju, Chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Right. Well, as you know, at some point in time, the program goes interactive. But when it's that time, we'll remind you of the process and the procedures. But for now, let's start from the very beginning. And here, I'm thinking we should put it in context and have a little bit of a background. It's okay. Nigeria's off the grey list. The question would be, how did we get on that grey list in the first place? Yes, we've heard that weak financial systems and some of the issues have led to Nigeria being on it. But let's have a little bit of a background. And so that will help us understand what it means to be taken off that grey list.
Thank you, Mr. Stover. Well, Nigeria underwent a mutual evaluation exercise in 2019. The FATF, that's the Financial Action Task Force, through its FSRBs, that's the regional bodies. We call them the FATF-styled regional bodies. And for the West African region, we have the GIABA, the Intergovernmental Action Against Money Laundering, GIABA, conducted a mutual evaluation for Nigeria, the second round mutual evaluation exercise in 2019. The mutual evaluation exercise is a process whereby countries' AMS, CFT, CPF measures are assessed along the FATF standards, the 40 recommendations of the FATF. This mutual evaluation exercise is divided into two. The technical compliance that deals with the laws, the regulations, and the legislations of a country. It's to assess its compliance with the 40 recommendations of the FATF, that's the standards of FATF. And then the immediate outcomes, the 11 immediate outcomes. These are the impact of those laws on the society, the effectiveness of those laws. Because it's not just enough to have the laws, but how do they impact on the economy? How do they impact on the citizenry? How do they impact on the financial system? So this assessment was done for Nigeria in 2019, and the report was tabled due to COVID incursion. It was delayed to 2021 when the COVID effect was relaxed. So it was published in 2021, and there were significant deficiencies identified, and 84 recommended actions was fashioned out for Nigeria by the GIABA and the FATF working together. Now, Nigeria had a 12-month period, a grace period of 12 months called the post-observation period for them to address these deficiencies. After the 12 months, Nigeria was able to address the 84 deficiencies, remaining 15. However, the FATF, after assessing the 15 remaining deficiencies, felt they are still significant enough to pose a threat to the world's financial system. So Nigeria was placed under the increased monitoring called the grey list. And GIABA also placed Nigeria under enhanced follow-up report, which means at every plenary of GIABA, Nigeria will render a report of its progress, its actions. Then the increased monitoring requires Nigeria to file a progress report every 4 months, and also face the joint group, have a face-to-face meeting with the joint group to discuss the report, the progress report filed. And then we had 2 years up to the May 2025 to address the action plan that jointly Nigeria and the FATF fashioned out. And it was 15 action plan, well, read 19. And that we were able to complete on time. Interestingly, we are among the very few countries in the world that have been able to do that within the period of 2 years. Most countries stay 3 to 4 years to be able to exit the grade. But Nigeria was able. In fact, in the process, Nigeria exhibited a lot of resilience, commitment, and dedication. Things that are quite rare in this part of the world. And then in February 2023, when Nigeria was placed under the grey list, there was a political commitment, a high-level political commitment that we will implement all the measures. And we did implement those measures. We improved our collaboration mechanism. Our coordination within the interagency coordination was improved. The IMC, the Interministerial Committee on Money Laundering, AMSCFT in Nigeria, was, it was reviewed and operationalized. So the operationalization of that committee impacted a lot on our ability to meet the other action plans and exit the grey list. And then the Secretariat of the IMC, that is the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, was able to coordinate properly and effectively the other agencies. And then we had a national task force that implemented this and followed it up. So each of these progress reports shows consistent, sustained improvement. So when we filed the 6th report, and then the FATF felt we have made significant progress, and the review, the joint group, came on an on-site in August and had an interface with both the public sector and the private sector, and also the political authorities. And the essence of the on-site was to verify whether what we had on paper is actually transformed into reality. And they were satisfied. So at the plenary, in October plenary in Paris, they agreed, and there were a lot of contributions. It was debated. The report was debated, and Nigeria was removed from the grey list. So it's a significant achievement. It's a milestone achievement. It's an achievement that will herald a lot of good things for Nigeria. Thank you.
All right, that sounds like a very comprehensive, deliberate, and intentional move by Nigeria to work on those deficiencies noticed. And I believe that by August, when the on-site the interaction took place, it was, the signals were clear then that Nigeria was going to be taking up that list, if I do recall.
Yes, at the on-site, at the end of the on-site, the joint review group gave their own assessment. Of course, they do not have the final say, because they will still render a report to the FATF, and the report will be debated by technical experts. So from the feelers we got, from their own personal assessment, it was obvious that we are on our way out of the grey list.
Right. Well, we'll come back and take a look at some of those issues, but let's come to the Divisional Head Education and Community Engagement Division of the ICPC. Obviously, there were factors that would have led to those deficiencies, and seeing that there were significant reasons to worry about Nigeria's position at the time in 2023 that could be a threat to the world's financial system, we got on this list. But again, listening to the General Counsel from the NFIU, it's not every country that works assiduously to exit this list in just 2 years. So what does that mean for Nigeria?
Well, it means that Nigeria took being on that grey list seriously and worked towards getting out of it. Like he said, there was a great synergy between the agencies involved, the integrity institutions, the security agencies, under the coordination of the Secretariat. Now, based on the deficiencies that the evaluation report brought out, there were some areas that were critical. The areas of capacity, deficiency in capacity, the areas of non-compliance with financial intelligence framework, and also the areas of actual engineering of systems, re-engineering of systems to ensure that anti-money laundering and CFT issues were tackled. Luckily for Nigeria, I would say we have a secretariat in the NFIU that was able to work with other agencies coordinate efforts, and here we are today. We are out of it. So basically, it's about synergy. Synergy got us out of that list.
Okay. Many more issues will come up as we go on, but Kelvin Emmanuel, the thinking is for a country that's placed on the grey list, there are very obvious disadvantages. Let's talk about that. What could be those disadvantages when you're on the grey list?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege to be here. I recall in 2023 when Nigeria was placed on the grey list, Moody's and Fitch had downgraded Nigeria's credit rating, B-, Fitch, CAA 1 for Moody's, which is like 3 steps to junk rating. And what it simply means is that because the rating agencies watch for what Financial Action Task Force does. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most cardinal points for credit review ratings, for both what they call your rating that leads for your issuer default rating and your risk premiums. It affects the cost of capital, and I'll explain that in much details. You notice that Nigerian government came to a critical head in 2022, where it couldn't fund the budget. The cost of capital was high for government bonds because the risk-free rates, the premiums on the risk-free rate was high. And the premiums for bringing in capital to Nigeria was high. The CBN had issues with balance of payments for settling FX obligations. And then it resulted to ways and means. But I'm not going to go into the ways and means conversation. So when you're on the grey list, so about 131 countries were reviewed, 114 were flagged.
I'm not cutting you short, but certainly actions such as those contributed to the problem.
Yes, it contributed to the problem. So 86 countries were exempted after review. 28 countries stayed on that list. Nigeria was one of the countries that stayed on that list. And when you consider the fact that the current management of the Central Bank of Nigeria, I rate them good so far in the management of monetary policy, has worked with all the agencies in government like ICPC and NFIU says this evening there's been an agency coordination and there's a secretariat that manages across government. And what you can see improvement with over the last 24 months is that there is more coordination within the government. You see that it has succeeded in being able to clear out outstanding obligations. It has succeeded in tightening the nose, even if I have issues with crude oil swap deals, solid commodity for loan, which is a major conduit for all kinds of mismatch value attribution facilities that are very common in Africa. There are countries in Africa in South Africa, in Central Africa, where they give out solid minerals in exchange for refined petroleum products, imports. You see that there is a direct impact between being on the grey list and the cost of capital. So there's what they call the country risk premium in Nigeria. You have what they call the secured overnight financing rate. That is an enhanced version of the London Interbank Offered Rate. And typically for frontier and emerging markets, that rate is about 5 to 6% on a dollar loan. So with Nigeria, for example, when you go to borrow, don't just pay your SOFR or your LIBOR, you also add what they call a country risk premium, which is typically between 3 and 4%, which means that loans that typically Nigeria should get for 6% or 5% is getting for 8, 9, 10%. That's the cost of capital. That's an added premium on your risk-free rates. It affects the country directly. It affects the cost of borrowing, and it affects debt servicing. And you can see now in 2025 budget, Nigeria has 15.8 trillion naira in debt service obligations. Most of that is for external loans that are owed, about $45 billion that the government is owed. So you can see the direct linkage between being on that list, and, the cost of capital. You can also see the premiums that institutional investors charge when they want to bring in hot money to buy government bonds and treasury securities because of the premiums they add on that risk-free rate for the treasury bills that the government offers to sell to get cash to run the government. So definitely I would say that the removal of Nigeria from the grey list is good. It's good news for the country. It's also going to impact on companies that do business, Nigerian companies that do business directly, on Nigerian banks that require clean lines with their foreign counterparts to get, clean lines on their prime lending rate for correspondent banking services. But there is still a lot of work to be done. And particularly my concern is on the fact that between 2019 to date, Nigeria has raised $14 billion in commodity swap loans through crude oil for forward sale agreements. Nigeria is planning to raise another $3 billion. And when you look at the value attribution framework for these loans, as it regards the strike price and the open market rate, the difference that goes into offshore debt service accounts not known to the National Assembly are subject to appropriation. And when you look at the fact that these loans does not really represent value in terms of its cascading effect on the economy, it gives me worry on, are we really serious about the coordination for AML and CFT?
Look into those, and as we go on with tonight's discussion. So let's come to Ogbonna Okuku. Break it down for us, if you will. When all of this started, many citizens were either unaware, didn't know what it meant to be on a grey list. In fact, not many knew what the FATF was actually, and some didn't even understand what consequences could arise from being on a grey list. And so, when gradually the public began to catch on to what was going on, the big question was, how would that impact, or how would it have impacted the general economy as to those who, well, are at the lower rungs of the ladder? You often hear people say, well, it's a government problem, they'll find a way and solve it.
Okay, so let me take you from the point where when you're dealing with, to grow your economy, you require a lot of inflows for foreign direct investment. Let me take you from that point of view, and looking at how, investor appetite, towards doing business in different environments, especially countries like Nigeria. Investors are, they are drawn to resources. They are drawn to resources, both human and natural resources. They are drawn to market, so the largeness of your market and the ability to purchase whatever they have produced, which means you must have disposable income to be able to pick up what services or product that they are producing. Number three, investors are interested in strategic government assets, and finally, which is most important, is efficiency in your system. So that if you don't have efficiency in your system, so what that does is it creates a denominator that cancels out every other thing that you have. So the natural resources, the human capital resources that you have, it cancels out. So every single person is looking for employment. We have unemployment issues, and then we want more resources in circulation within our system. We want to be a bit more productive. Then again, looking at cross-border transactions. So if people at the lower, the lower cadre or the populace do not have employment, it means that we don't have enough investment coming into, we don't have greenfield investment coming into the country. So being on that grey list means that a lot of scrutiny will have to come into play if an investor wants to come and do business in Nigeria. So it puts this red flag on any economy that is on that grey list, because one, repatriation of your profit is going to be an issue, because how do you move monies from point A to point B, knowing that the scrutiny that it has to go through, or how does your money, how are you sure that the money that you're bringing into an economy is going directly to to play its role? So in reality is, if you don't have new industries coming into your economy. So that means there's not going to be your raw material supply strategy, which is where most of the populace, let's say, because I mean, more people are farmers, and then those farmers are the ones that produce things that you need for your industry. So if you don't have, an offtake mechanism to support industrialization, so that means those people down there who are supposed to be producing your raw material, they won't have what to do. So generally speaking, if a country stays on that level, yes, it's going to affect free flow of investment. It's going to affect perception when it comes to cross-border transaction, and then again, it's going to make it difficult for people to want to do business within your environment. So generally speaking, it's not a good place to be. And then those people down there, all they know is we're not getting enough money. We don't have jobs. And these investments are the things, they are the propellers. They are the things that will make, those are the things that are required to run an economy, or to, make, the economy, oil the economy. So if those transactions are not going on, it will become difficult for anybody who lives in that environment to have their own income or run their own lives.
Right. So in very simple terms, if I were an investor, and I took a look at a country that's on that grey list, then I'd be wary of taking my resources there. I would think twice.
Yes.
Say, that's not a place to go.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So we would be saying the truth if we said being on that grey list affected Nigeria's standing, economy, and so many other things to a large extent, Dr. Akishiju. And that, when you have a country that's in dire straits in that manner, nothing really works well.
Well, things work, but with a lot of constraints. And that constraint is deliberate, because in the global economy, there's wariness around what I call errant money. Money that is not accounted nor accountable for. So the global economy frown at the possibilities of money that does not have a track and does not have a purpose, not budgeted for by sovereigns and whatever tier of capital it may be. And so therefore, the idea is to constrict whatever the jurisdiction, such money may emanate from. And it is also appropriate for that same jurisdiction, because in an economic environment where money laundering is pervasive, it distorts all the fundamentals, all the economic fundamentals within that environment, especially in terms of monetary policy and all that, liquidity ratios and all that. And at the end of the day, you start seeing manifestations of these economic distortions, and you are not able to exactly determine, what are the possible reasons for it. So I think for me, the precise definition is to say that that's getting on the Great List is an equivalent of a name and shame mechanism. To describe a jurisdiction as one that is inappropriate, to do business with. And that if you are doing business with that jurisdiction, it is an OYO thing, an on your own thing, because it is believed that regulations is laxed within that jurisdiction. And therefore, whoever wants to do business in that jurisdiction, because it is also possible that resources and the related economic mix could be cheaper, could be attractive in that jurisdiction. But whoever wants to exploit that jurisdiction would also want to do it at a cost. So therefore, a certain percentage is allowed, is the natural transactional value in other jurisdictions, because of the constraints inherent in this reference jurisdiction then of course the cost would have to increase. And at the threshold of that increase would of course come back to haunt those of us who are on the lower rung, of the economy. So to a large extent, I want to congratulate Nigeria for exiting the grey list. We've gone in and out, I think 2 or 3 times, but I think it's important, that we make it the pillar, of our financial industry, as it were, because again, perhaps if we are excited about FAT, for instance, we know that it will reflect on inflow, and inflow will reflect on our foreign exchange reserves, and our foreign exchange reserves have a way of creating this multiplier effect in the economy, and essentially also impact inflation, which in turn impacts the very, the people at the lowest rung of the ladder. So we should congratulate ourselves and congratulate the NFIUs and of course the CBN officials who are not here, because I know that there have been a lot of intergovernmental engagement on this matter.
What this does prove is that the country has to remain on its toes. Stemming from what he said, that we've been in and out a number of times. And I had someone talk about sustaining this, the sustainability. What would it take?
Yes. First, I need to state that the biggest effect, the biggest consequence of being on a grey list is reputational damage. It's a damage to the reputation of the country. It means that Nigeria will not be on the table. And it's one of the propellers, one of the enablers. Because for the first time I saw Nigerians feel disrespected. The thought was, why should somebody say that we are on the grey list and we are Nigerians? So it was a galvanizing factor. It was one of the things that pushed the efficiency and resilience we saw in the course of exiting the grey list. Yes, the issues of other financial issues like the credit, low credit worthiness and the increase in rating and borrowing rates, and they are all collateral damages to the economy. But the biggest one and the most visible is the reputational damage. Every other thing congregates around it. And yes, this is not the first time we are getting into the grey list or getting out of the grey list. But we are also determined to ensure that it never happens again. So we have put structures in place to ensure that there is sustainability. And good at it, we are going into another round of mutual evaluation in 2027. So we have started the process of getting ready. We have built capacity, and we continue to build capacity. There has been a lot of capacitation in this process in these 2 years, both for the financial intelligence, for the law enforcement, even for the judiciary and the reporting entities. We've tried to build capacity, and our development partners have been very wonderful. They have been cooperative, they have been supportive, and so also some friendly nations that have supported us. Then we've actually done a national risk assessment as a consequence of this, the grey listing, and it has also enabled us to know our risk, because the FATF's measures are all built on a risk base. So we've known our risks, we know how to address them. And importantly, the major flaws that we have found, the flaws of coordination and then poor or weak supervision of some of the DNFBP sector have been breached. We have, in fact, for the legal practitioners, the legal sector, we made a tremendous improvement. It was over the years, there have been a lot of litigation. The legal practitioners do not want to come within the regulation of CFT. But we were able to, in the course of this, we were able to reach an agreement, and we have a process of regulating the legal services that other countries have been coming, other jurisdictions have been coming to understudy. So we have established that. We have also established some of the vulnerable sectors. We have established, built capacity within those sectors so that they will be able to understand their risk profile and then institute measures, mitigation measures. These are some of the requirements, some of the things that the FATF will look at. And then the issue of beneficial ownership, which was non-existing at the time the mutual evaluation second round was conducted. Today we have implanted a sound mutual beneficial ownership registry, both at the CAC and NEBSA, and then trust that have been outside regulation has now come into the regulatory framework. So we've done a lot within these past 2 years that if we sustain it, and we believe we are going to sustain it, because the level of hard work, the level of dedication, the level of commitment and passion that has been exhibited across board by all the entities, the stakeholders within the industry, it will not just be filtered away in 1 year. So we intend to sustain it, and we intend to ensure that we do not get into the grey list. The only sector that is a bit that may be a bit tricky is the virtual asset sector that was not actually part of the mutual evaluation, second round mutual evaluation, but they are going to, we know that emerging technologies is an issue now. So digital assets is going to be fundamental to the third round. So we are also working in that space, and we are going to ensure that we do not found wanting. So it's a clarion call to all of us, all Nigerians, all hands should be on deck to ensure that our economy do not receive this kind of jolt again. Thank you.
All right, in addition to the discussion in the studio, we have a number of reports as well. Let's see this one from Kano.
Kano, a historic commercial and industrial hub, is poised to benefit from the Nigeria's removal from the Financial Action Task Force grey list, and further strengthened by the economic diplomacy and pact signed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu during a state visit to Brazil. Business leaders say the move boosts confidence in the country's financial system, attracting both local and international investments.
You will see that any time a bank wants to do a transaction globally, there's a lot of scrutiny, there is a lot of cost to be paid. But now with this removal, we will have reduced compliance costs.
Nigeria is a country that has a deficit of investment. We have a huge gap of deficit. So this kind of development will give those that were willing to invest in Nigeria that kind of confidence and trust to invest in Nigeria.
Experts emphasize the importance of modernization, technology adoption, and strong compliance to fully leverage this opportunity.
Ensure that our own large number of population are skilled enough to, in both the agricultural sector as well as in the agricultural value chain, and see that the industries have harnessed this human as well as the capital development or capital resources that the state has.
They call for public-private partnership, investment in infrastructure, and targeted support for small and medium enterprises. The move also aligns with President Tinubu's $1 trillion economy vision and reinforces Kano's position as a leading economic powerhouse in northern Nigeria. In Kano, Aminu Umar.
All right, from Kano, we take this other report from Lagos.
According to online data, the Financial Action Task Force is an intergovernmental global body established in 1981 to set international standards to promote policies to protect the integrity of the global financial system. Industry players say the grey list refers to jurisdictions under increased monitoring, which means that countries under this list work to address strategic deficiencies. The removal of Nigeria from the grey list, therefore, is a positive outcome, expected to propel economic growth. Industry players also identify implications of this move in boosting the nation's image at the level of international trade.
One thing that is very important that we don't joke with globally is the fact that for every country you do business, there must be this representation of financial discipline before anybody can do business with you. And you do not, and that is driven by the financial infrastructure that you put on place, like the central bank, like the Security and Exchange Commission and the rest of them. Before now, you will notice that people will come and invest in Nigeria. They cannot even repatriate their capital. I mean, so Nigeria being removed from that list means a lot to a lot of people. It means it has driven to the fact that a lot of reform is planned, and we have to do more. There is 4 trillion hydro fund. I'm not even talking of wealth. I'm talking, they are talking of funds. Funds in Africa that is hydro is not doing anything. And they are saying, look, why can't we create value within the African system where those money can be tapped for investment, for projects, for developing ourselves? And how do we do that? We do that by focusing on how to harness what others have done. And what has others done? In America, they built a system. In Europe, they built what we call the Marshall Plan. We should build a similar Marshall Plan product for Africa, and especially for Nigeria. I think that's what President Tinubu is trying to sell to the world.
So most importantly is that now that we're out of that dark tunnel, we should make sure that we don't get back, ever get back into that tunnel. And the only way to do it is to have very formidable institutional structures.
More importantly, experts say there is an urgent need for attitudinal change in fostering transparency and best practices, especially for small and medium-scale enterprises to thrive for economic growth expansion.
Realizing or achieving our development aspirations has to be the whole of society approach. It's not only government, and it's not only the entrepreneurs. All of us have roles to play, because even entrepreneurs complain about the attitude of some of their workers. A lot of pilfering goes on in businesses, and that's why you find even some investors, Nigerian investors, and even foreign investors, go to bring in workers from other countries. So we need to improve our attitude. We need to ensure that our values, right, are revived, and hard work, integrity, honesty, right. We shouldn't go into criminal activities. If our GDP grows at double digits, that will also impact on our per capita income. That will also impact on our living standards.
Nigeria's exit, industry watchers also say, is expected to trigger bigger economic viability for maximum gains.
Let's come back to the studio here, and 2 things caught my attention. First is the matter of institutions, institutional structures, strong institutions, and the matter of capacity. This has always been a challenge for Nigeria, hasn't it?
Yeah. It has been, and like Obiamalu said, there is the need for capacity to be built. In the ICPC, for example, the ICPC is never tired of training, retraining, and building capacity in these regards. In wanting to build strong institutions, we have a process we call the System Studies and Review, where we look at institutions in the country, look at areas that are prone to corruption and corrupt practices. We go in, advise institutions on how to strengthen their structures and processes to ensure that there is accountability, there's transparency, and there's better integrity within the system. And we are also working seriously on enhancing capacity of our staff and engaging with members of the larger community, the civil service, the civil society organizations, the business and management organizations, to together build a system that every Nigerian will be proud of. Because, like he said earlier, the biggest damage is reputational damage. We have heard from Lagos and Kano, where they talked about entrepreneurs, talked about small businesses, banks. The individual has suffered too from this damage to the Nigerian reputation, with Nigeria being on the grey list. Prior to 2023, I recall that an average civil servant who had the opportunity of going overseas for training could walk into any bank's ATM and use his Nigerian card. Get whatever currency in whatever country you are in from your Naira debit card. But by 2023, when we got onto that list, it became difficult. Many people who did not know traveled, tried to use their cards, and they were stranded. And that was because the reputation of Nigeria within the international space was already bad.
So sometimes, without knowing, you could find yourself in other parts of the world and things are just not working for you, and you begin to wonder why. And for instance, I've seen the case of many Nigerians who walked into shops and stores, and they had people from all over the world, citizens from other parts of the country. They brandished their cards, and everything went on smoothly. As soon as it got to the turn of a Nigerian, then there's a second look. And
certainly.
Yes, because being on the grey list also, as he said, affects correspondence banking. So it's one of the fallbacks, it's one of the consequences. And because of that, it affects the use of Naira cards across the borders. And because generally everybody knows that once you're on the grey list, it's a signpost that we should be wary of transactions, financial transactions coming from that jurisdiction. So it's expected. But now those are all stories of yesterday.
Okay, let me just fast forward a little bit. And for a country, we're out of the grey list, but for a country that's on the grey list, there's this worry about money laundering and undocumented funds flying around, especially with terrorism all about the place. People being able to launder money for terrorist activities going through. Do you find such in countries that have weak accounting systems and deficiencies? Do you find that more, pronounced in those countries?
Very interesting question you asked, and the reason why this question is very interesting is because it's my personal opinion that Nigeria should operate a zero-based budgeting system, and that one of the biggest drawbacks for the Nigerian government today is procurement fraud. Even if it's an elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, but it's a problem. And then two major areas where he mentioned that has been a major conduit for money laundering is in properties and crypto. A report came out and said in 2024, I think $50 billion went through digital assets from Nigeria in 2024.
We're the second highest.
We're second highest
in the world.
In the world. So the good news is that, of course, National Assembly has passed and the President has ended to Investment and Securities Act, updated 2024. And the SEC is more proactive and has created a digital sandbox for regulating crypto. But it needs to do more. Because the issue about beneficial ownership, especially through countries that are known to host beneficial ownership with trusts, with unknown beneficiary owners, connected to funds that comes from Nigeria, it's a major issue that needs to be tackled. I don't think the government needs to celebrate yet. I don't think the government needs to bring out the siren and celebrate and say, let's drink and make merry. No, it shouldn't. Because there is a lot of work to be done. The reality today is that until the government deals with procurement fraud, right, despite the fact that it has a debt and shortage of revenue to fund its budget, right, it will not be able to provide governance, adequate governance for the people.
This takes us back to the question of capacity and well, institutions. For instance, regulatory institutions.
Okay, so this is what it is. I try to, when it comes to this kind of conversation, so what I say is this: from the state of anarchy to a centralized state, you have a few bus stops. One is you have set of rules. Then you have informed citizenry, a mass of informed citizenry. Number three, then you now have the institutions, and then you have leadership. Now, these components, these bus stops, like I call them, that's the journey from a state of anarchy to a centralized state. Those bus stops are so crucial. But one of the most important parts is the critical mass of an informed citizenry. Because what happens is, at the end of the day, who are the people who are going to make the laws? People from the citizenry. Who are the people who are going to man the institutions? The same citizenry. Something happened one day. I was watching clearly at one of the airports. I think it was at Heathrow Airport. I sat down. I watched two security guys. So I could see them from where I was. So the security guy left. And then when he was coming back, his colleagues searched him. So for me, that was a lesson. But the spirit of esprit de corps here would make, if another colleague goes out and comes back, they will just shake each other and continue. So when you create a system that will regulate itself, and that means you have to also, detach human interference. And how do you do that? Creating systems, models, using technology to make sure that the institution you are going to create will stand the test of time. How would that happen? Because when human beings are involved, because what I have noticed is the difference between the developed countries, let me use the word, and the developing countries, that in developing countries, we expect to preach to people to do the right things. But while in developed countries, they make people do the right things. They are two different things. Making people do the right thing and preaching to them to do the right thing, they are two different things. Because one, if the day you wake up that you want to commit a crime, that's the day you have decided to, if they catch me, I'm going to jail, or something will happen to me. But here, there's this thing about, we can have mercy, there's something that can happen. So when you know there's no choice, the only thing is, if you're ready to do the crime, you're ready to do the time. So those are the kind of systems that we must create, because knowing that these things affect us so much, in a sense that, as we speak today, yes, I agree with my colleague here who says that we shouldn't party yet. African countries, with your card, you can actually tap on all ATM, ATM machines, the ATM machines, or POS, sorry, have the place where you can tap your card, and then payments can happen. It still can happen in Nigeria, but it's happening in other parts of Africa. So, which means that there are still levels of this scrutiny, levels of this systems that will make it difficult for transactions to happen, and then, fraudulent transactions to happen. So, having said that, I think if need be, if we need to, sometimes if it's either you buy technology or you borrow technology or you find a way to get the technology to work for you, we need to deploy a lot of technology to make sure those institutions, because of the way of life, our way of life, is new to a lot of people, being able to, adhere to rules and regulations. So I think you should, make it difficult for people to want to just do anything they want to do. So after a while, we'll not get used to, we'll get used to following rules and regulations, and that will help us, a bit more than just, trying to, make people, preach to people to do the right thing. Because the more you preach, if it's about preaching, I don't think we should be where we are today. But I think if we insist on compliance and regulation, it would actually help us a whole lot.
Insist on compliance and regulation. I'd like you, Dr. Akinci, to take it up from there. What we regularly know in local parlance as paddy, and that has done a lot of damage to upholding rules and regulations, hasn't it?
I think that also is a function of the system. What system have we been able to structure? Thankfully, we are exiting what I call the black market economy. There was a time to access foreign exchange. You must know somebody who knows somebody in the Central Bank of Nigeria. And of course, by the time whatever you wanted, gets to you, so much cost addition, will reflect in the eventual service delivered. So I think once the system is in place that allows for openness, that allows for integrity, that allows for access without restriction, I think the system itself would adapt. And that is why, perhaps for the first time, people are getting to know that there is something called Nigeria being placed, on the list on the grey list. And why am I saying this? There was a time that if you wanted to buy anything outside this country, to make any form of cross-border transaction, you don't even ever think of going to a bank. You know that your best would be to either call your friend. It's a black market economy, like I said. It's either you call a friend somewhere in the UK or in the US who would, of course, do this exchange for you and all that. Some people don't know that this is actually a black market, because it's off the official grid, So people are not bothered about the stress you have to go through, when you are involved in this kind of transaction. But now, because more people can access, the foreign exchange markets, it has become apparent that if you are constrained in terms of monitoring and the processes you need to go through, when it's constrained, you know the impact immediately, unlike before. So now, I'm thinking that this system will become self-sustaining, because everybody would, of course, want to relate within that bracket, within that channel, as it were. So to a large extent, once the system works, and there's a distance between individuals, operators, and the transaction. The transaction platform, is most likely there will be sustenance of the system. So to a large extent, I am still excited. I'm excited because now I could do transaction across the country, and I could monitor my transaction movement on SWIFT. There was a time you could not even see Nigerian transaction on the global SWIFT platform because it was always flagged, and it may not be the jurisdiction where you want to conclude your transaction that it will be flagged. It may be off-grid platforms. So you have all this headache. But I think now that you know that you could place your LC. I mean, that's one instrument that booster and of course drive foreign transactions. I mean, foreign business transaction. If you are placing LC and there's a lot of constraints around that, and you cannot even access it easily, you become more of looking for paddy arrangements. But now that you can walk into your bank and you can facilitate this thing, you also want to maintain the integrity of the system, as it were.
Right.
Well,
I was going to add a point.
Yes.
I was in China last year, and I remember in the city of Zhengzhou, my host, who is an original equipment manufacturer, mentioned to me that a Nigerian company in Ogun State opened an LC of $2.2 million to buy some equipment from China. And for 18 months, they struggled to get the LC funded. And because he mentioned the issue about LC, and it was because Nigeria had a system where there was like a 33% black market premium between the official and black market rates. You know, one of the reasons, for example, why the banks are able to get clean lines for correspondent banking and settle FX transactions, and some Naira cards are beginning to work, is because the CBN has succeeded in harmonizing the exchange rates. Yeah. You can see more liquidity. They are transiting from the point where you have CBN interventionism to market demand and supply. Right. And the black market premium has reduced to below 5%, which is the recommended level. And you can see more liquidity, and the Naira has been strengthening, even if I think that the Naira still has some mileage to do. And the actual real value for the Naira to exchange rate should be anywhere around 1,150 Naira to US dollar, not where it is currently. So Naira is undervalued by another 25 to 27%. So this issue around being able to get LCs funded is very significant issues for companies the ability to do business and transact internationally.
Okay. All right. Yes, Mr. Obuna talked about compliance, and I said compliance as an obligation is what got us off the grey list. Okay. What will keep us sustained coming out of the grey list is when we see compliance as a culture, when we imbibe the culture of compliance. Because if we continue to see it as an obligation and we do not comply, there will be consequences. But if we see it as a culture, it is what we do as part of our existence, it will be easier for us to sustain the gains of exiting the grey list. And again, as to the issue of consequences for actions, right. Mm-hmm. The part of the assessment is to ensure that your sanctions are dissuasive. If sanctions are not deterring bad actors, it's meaningless.
It takes you back to the judiciary, for instance. If you
yes, and the judiciary is part of the assessment. All the angles, the intelligence, the investigators, the prosecutors, and the judiciary. In fact, in the course of the assessment, the number of STRs filed to the FIU is assessed. And the STRs are filed by reporting entities, the banks, the DNFBPs. The number of STR that was analyzed by the FIU is also assessed. Then the number of IR that were disseminated and led to investigation, the number of investigations that led to prosecution, and the number of prosecutions that led to conviction, and how long it took to convict.
It's a problem.
To conclude the case. So all those things are part of the nation's AML-CFT measures. You need to work on each of them. That chain needs to be stabilized. So none is standing alone. Yes, during the mutual evaluation, recommendation 29, which affects the FIU, we are largely compliant. So we had, in fact, we were fully compliant. We had no issue. However, Nigeria is what went for evaluation. It is Nigeria's that is being evaluated and not the individual agencies. So even when you do yours, and Mr. B did not do his, because you are strong as your weakest link.
Right.
So all in the chain need to be up and doing. So and that's why the capacity building we're doing, we do it across board, including for the judiciary.
You know, you just talked about investigation that leads to prosecution, that leads to conviction.
Yes.
And the question I have is, does the Nigerian judiciary have the infrastructure and the human capital to prosecute on the cases that are before it?
That's why
the question that the government needs to ask. That's why we cannot afford to celebrate yet, because there's so much work to be done.
That's why we are building capacity, especially on new trends, on digital assets. The ICPC just finished their judicial training about 3 weeks ago. EFCC has done theirs. The new tax bill, the Tax Act, the FIRS has also engaged the judiciary. We are trying to let them understand this. After the mutual evaluation report was published and we started our remedial actions, it led to a reform, legislative reform. And we had about 3 new acts. The Money Laundering Act of 2022, the Terrorism Prevention Act of 2022 and the POCA, the Process of Crime Act 2022. We sat down with the judicial and said, let's look at these laws. They are introducing new elements into our judicial system. And the Section 23(6) of the MLPPA makes the judge the master of his court. So it now gives you leeway to shorten the period of trial, the timeline for trial. So you do not need to stay proceedings because somebody had gone on appeal. And those are some of the introductions, the innovations we introduced to try to see that we meet international standards.
Sounds like a lot of work, but at this point we'll take a short... Thanks for staying with us. Tonight is all about Nigeria's exit from the FATF grey lists. And, well, this is a segment where the phone lines will be open. The numbers to call will be on your screens. You can call in with a question or a comment on the issues at stake. And we say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in and your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we encourage you to keep those questions and comments as brief and straight to the point as possible. We urge you not to worry too much about the greetings. A simple hello is just fine. And just look at it. One other little matter, just to know that your call has been passed through to the studio. Once you see your name on screen, it means you are good to go with your question or your comment. That's the way to know that your call is through to the studio. So let's keep those calls coming through. We start off with another of our reports, this time from Enugu.
Nigeria's exit from the Financial Action Task Force grade list positively impacts on its global image and economy by increasing international confidence, improving investments, and reducing transaction costs. Since the country's grey listing in 2003, Nigeria has grappled with international suspicion over its anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financial frameworks. The 22 years ago grey listing followed renewed concerns about anti-money laundering safeguards, creating barriers that deterred foreign banks and investors. This affected Nigerian citizens as transactions were delayed and scrutinized while foreign direct investment dwindled.
The idea was to ensure that the issues of financial or illicit money laundering transactions were reduced globally. Because if you allow people who do not manage their resources or whose sources of assets were not known, they can take over governance globally. Therefore, there was need to set up a platform or templates for managing accountability and resource from one country to the other.
According to experts, Nigeria's removal from the FATF grey list boosts its global financial standard and unlocks opportunities for foreign investments. They explain that the move, most importantly, will foster growth in key sectors such as energy, technology, among others that are crucial in job creation and development.
It's going to increase the investment climate for Nigeria and for the globe, because all over the world, globally, investors are looking for safe places where they can put their investment and is safe.
Other key players in the sector envisage that the exit could lead to a gradual appreciation of Naira as the markets respond positively to increased liquidity and improved investor trust. Some Nigerians in the Southeast region described Nigeria's exit from the Financial Action Task Force grey list as a significant economic milestone that showcases the country's commitment to transparency, integrity, and financial accountability.
Our leaders owe it as obligation for us to match their words with their action. Let them focus more. If actually we exited.
While Nigeria's exit from the FATF grey list remains a laudable achievement, relentless efforts are required to preserve this hard-earned credibility. Nigeria is expected to build on this momentum to actualize its vast potentials. In Enugu, Kelechi Ochiara.
All right, that report from Enugu, and just behind the scenes, a number of our guests here noted the particular respondent who was skeptical, the doubting Thomas, as they say, that if indeed Nigeria has exited that grey list. Let's start with you, Dr. Keshiju, and the skepticism derives from no other reason than the fact that many citizens would question. We had regulatory institutions, we had systems in place, and yet things slid, things went awry. And so what's there to say that it won't happen again? Is there the political will? Wouldn't we see a scenario, same scenario, play out with particularly financial recklessness and disregard for rules and regulations? Yeah. I mean, can you say this administration has that political will to carry it through?
Well, I think to a large extent, we have seen the administration made various announcements around reforms. And I think to a large extent, there's a momentum around confidence building in terms of what the government made commitment, reformed commitments, and some of these reforms are being implemented. And we are seeing how they are being implemented. We are not just seeing how they are being implemented. We are seeing the first green shoots, as a result of, in consequence of these reforms. So to a large extent, that could start building, bridging that trust gap, that had been a major affliction, social affliction for Nigerians over the years. Because indeed, over a long period of time, there had been that disconnect between the average Nigerian and government. So much that when a policy or a commitment is publicly made by a government, and you don't get to see the consequence or consequences of that commitment, the next such announcement is visited or treated with a lot of distrust. And that is why that gentleman actually espoused the fact that if indeed, despite the fact that we have in the studio people who were directly involved in that process. But I think the whole thing is about making commitments and ensuring that that commitment is publicly implemented, and not just about implementing. You are also seeing the consequences, the results, the productivity of the process. But I think so far so good. We have seen under this government harmonization of foreign exchange windows. We saw how the Naira virtually crashed at a point in time. We are seeing how it is appreciating, we are seeing how more money is getting to all tiers of government, but we are yet to start seeing, the impact of such money, especially in the areas of provision of infrastructure, But I think in a way, I'm also getting more comfortable with the way government responds to trade union activities. Over the last 6 months, if we did an audit, I tracked about 7 possible strike, threat of strike, that were properly managed. So it also tells me that the administration is pursuing a regime of peace and stability, and that is it's a bedrock, is a pivot of progress. So all well and good. I think we will continue with this pace, and let us see more commitments by government, and not just about government, because the whole thing about government and governance, you risk becoming esoteric if we don't get to see more faces aligned with government activities, government policies, and all that. So it's not just in the newspaper that we should be reading or hearing in the television or radio. We must start seeing an alignment between what government is doing and people who are supposed to be implementers of the policies of governments.
So for Ogonokuku, it's not just government. It's not a government affair. It's a Nigerian affair. But that also calls for more citizens' engagement and upholding the values of integrity and okay, all right. So just hold that in mind. Let's take in this call if we can. Dr. Peter calling in from Abuja. If you're there, go right ahead. Yes, hello, go right ahead.
My question is simple. To what extent will Nigeria's removal from the FATF list translate into tangible improvements in foreign investment increase, financial sector credibility and governance reforms? Given the country's persistent challenges such as corruption and what I would like to refer to as below average regulatory investments.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. First, Dr. Peter, the exit from the grey list is a direct positive statement on Nigeria's AML CFT measures. So yes, it's a confidence, it's the world's renewal of confidence in our measures. So that is also expresses the confidence of the foreign investors. And the sectors, all the institutions involved in AML CFT were part of the process that led to the exit. So the institutions have also been re-energized. If there were deficiencies, if there were flaws, if there were shaking of responsibilities by those institutions prior to the listing, they had addressed those deficiencies at the time we exited. And most importantly, what we need to have at the back of our mind is that it's a work in progress. We have exited the grey list. We continue to ensure that we sustain the gains, and one of the ways to ensure that we sustain the gains is to ensure that we deal with our risk profile. We ensure that the high risks are taken care of, and one of the highest risks in this country is corruption. It's corruption, terrorism, and drug trafficking. These are the three highest risk factors we have in Nigeria. And if we continue to ensure and apply the mitigation measures, which includes distorting, detecting, and punishing for those offenses, the confidence and trust of foreign investors will continue to grow, and it will reinvigorate our economy.
I was just going to add quickly that if you look at the solid mineral sector, especially with gold, lithium, bauxite, that is mined, Nigeria does not have strong regulatory railings for capturing the regulation and mining tax for non-state actors that mine gold, lithium around the country. In Osun State, in Zamfara, in Sokoto, in Plateau State, and in some other clusters. Nigeria does not have strong regulation and a mining tax framework like we have in the oil and gas sector to manage non-state actors that mine. And it's interesting because when you look at the amount of revenues that are lost from jets that have transponders off, that come into Nigeria, private jets, and leave Nigeria with all kinds of extractives, solid mineral extractives, you see how much revenue the government loses. And you juxtapose it with what Mahama has done in Ghana since he assumed office last year, early this year, won election and assumed office. Ghanaian government came up with a framework for capturing small and middle level artisanal miners that requires that the FX revenues they get from selling of gold is actually repatriated to strengthen the city.
Okay.
And I was just going to quickly add that when you had a black market premium during this period when Nigeria went into the grey list, the way through which a lot of companies are unable to source FX to do repatriation out of Nigeria was able to get their monies was that they were buying up commodities in Nigeria, they will export it, get the FX, and then send it to third-party accounts instead of it to come out as net export proceeds to Nigeria.
Okay. So I know you wanted to add to that, but let's quickly take in this call from Adeni, who's calling in from Ikorodu. Adeni, go ahead. Hello, Adeni, are you there with us? Okay, let's go to
I wanted to add that, yes, we agree that corruption is one of the major contributors to where we found ourselves before now. And like he said, all agencies were involved in this. We would not say that we were perfect and we were up there. No. It's work in progress. We are all working towards building a better system. And I want to state that the ability to trace stolen assets across jurisdictions and recover them to the extent where you even get them forfeited is an added advantage that has brought us out of this grey list, which the anti-corruption agencies working with other agencies are contributing to in order to restore confidence to the governance process.
All right, so let's go back to you now.
So let's go back to the question that you asked. So you know what they say that an idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Right.
So people don't ask the question, so what is the implement in the devil's workshop? It's actually idle funds. Idle funds is actually that implement that is in the devil's workshop. So what am I trying to say in essence is until you begin to create a bypass or a system where you don't allow funds just sit around, including debt capitals in real estate, you don't allow them sit around. So other clients, what you do is monies are designed, because as it's called currency. Currency is not supposed to be not supposed to be dormant, it's supposed to be moving. So until you create systems that would twist. I'm very careful with my choice of word. Twist idle funds owners to make sure that those funds are productive. Let's say, for example, if you had properties that are not used as collateral for a transaction, for example, and then you are made to pay ×2 on tax property, you will be forced to make sure that even if you are going to use that as a third-party collateral for a transaction. So I'm just talking about systems that you can actually create, looking at the peculiarity of our place. So what does that mean? Monies are not given to everybody. Monies are only given to those that are known. So every money must have a name, so it's traceable. Okay. So for taxation purposes, for general income purposes, and then for productivity. So if, as we are creating systems, and we look at how to jumpstart transaction via making sure that no fund is idle, no estate is idle, then it makes your work a lot easier. It makes monitoring a lot easier because you have created a peculiar system that will help us jumpstart our economy, bring in productivity, and then curb the illicit fund, the flow of illicit funding within your system.
But then how many states in Nigeria actually have geographic information
all right,
system?
Let's get this call in and we'll continue on the other side. Umar Anachi, I believe, calling in from Birnin Kebi, regular call on this program. Hello, Umar, go ahead.
How many states actually?
Umar, are you there?
And even those states that have it, the geographic information system, are they working at optimum?
Hello, Cyril.
Yes, go ahead. Good evening.
Okay. My name is Umar Anache, calling from MNK. Good evening, discussion there.
The issue is that no punishment, and we honor these corrupt leaders, or we honor corruption. Look at the Accountant General, former Accountant General of the Federation, who cut away with billions of naira. At the end of the day, he was stubborn as traditional ruler in Kano. So those are the things that would encourage corruption. And the whole citizens of the country, they are to partner and cooperate to see that if you steal money, you will not be honored by the citizens of the country. In that way, you are keeping the people from corruption. And secondly, EFCC, for example, say they have 700 and so people that they steal money. What stops them from publishing those names? We Nigerians, we want to know them. In that way, you pinpoint that so person is among the list of the EFCC that published is a corrupt person. So people will learn how to do away with them and keep them in the society like an idol. If it is such kind of thing that we hate those people, by hating them, we are contributing towards the issue of corruption. May God continue to bless our country. That is my vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Umar Anachi. Back to the studio here. Yes, we started off with the very first caller who wanted to know tangible improvements being off this list, how it would translate to tangible improvements in governance issues. That's one of the
borrowing spreads will improve. The cost of Euro bonds, the cost of development finance loans, the risk-free rate, the premiums on the risk-free rate is also going to impact on, hot money that comes in by foreign portfolio investors into Nigeria. The premiums are placed on the risk-free rates for bringing in those funds into government securities. I also think that it will impact on long-term patient capital, non-speculative, because when you have a country on high risk, like on the grey list, you see more FPI volumes coming as investments. FPI volumes are usually volumes that doesn't stay more than 24 months. It can come in the first month and move out in the 6 months.
Okay.
You see that migration from FPI as you move from the grey list and your credit rating improves to actual patient capital, non-speculative capital that stays for more than 5 years.
All right, let's return to the phones.
Again, I go back to the issue of reputational damage and ability to sit on the table where decisions are made.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Let's try and get this call through. Adeni called in earlier. The line didn't go through. Adeni, are you back? Hello, Adeni calling from Ikorodu. Hello, Adeni.
Hello.
Yes, go right ahead.
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes. Hello, go ahead.
Adeni is my from Ikorodu, Lagos.
Right.
Yeah. I'm an ardent follower of this program, Tuesday Live by Christopher. Thank you for bringing this today. Yeah, we know that the government of the day is working as seriously to improve the economy of Nigeria. But when people that understand this, we know we eventually cascade down from the top to bottom. Because in the discussion, we hear that the bottom, like the people at the bottom are not feeling it. Yes, it is expected. But however, we also know that the federal governments are pushing a lot of money to states that are collecting, some states double, some more than double what they were collecting before, including local government with the new. Now we concern is corruption is a problem. Is there any way, like one of the speakers was saying, a lot of institutions that came together to get this result? Is there, apart from the judiciary mentioned here that was also coordinated, what about the National Assembly? What is the framework of the laws that could be put? Because it could be an institution, whether it is APCs, PDPs, whatever name, anybody that is there. Once the institution has been built, and they must follow it, is there a way that the National Assembly can also come into this and put vibrant constitution that will build our institution so that whatever is achieved today will not come out the other way around like it was said before, we were going in and out and in and out. So that if we have a concrete institution that whatever we have achieved, we stay. Thank you very much.
Right.
That's my contribution.
Thank you so very much. I think it was you who started talking about reforms, even in the with regards to the laws, and he's raising that now. The National Assembly is the institution that makes the laws. So, is the problem inadequate laws or weak enforcement of laws?
I think it's a combination of a lot of factors, not the inadequate laws per se, because laws by themselves do not curb bad actions. It is actually the consequences, and that's why sanctions should be deterrent. Sanctions should be dissuasive. And then the issue of enforcement is tied also to sanctions and to consequences for breaking the laws. But I think most importantly, it's an attitudinal change thing. The Umar from Brandon KB talked about it a lot when he was talking about in the days of past when we do name and shame in our traditional way instead of celebrating people who have been found corrupt or judged corrupt. I know growing up, I know there are some persons whose source of income are not quite clear to the society. And your parents will advise you not to go close to those houses. But today, those things have been eroded. We celebrate people even when we don't know their means of livelihood. People live in ostentation when you can't clearly talk about the source of the funds they were displaying, and you see them displaying it. So I think part of our challenge is attitudinal issue, is a moral issue. We need to get back to, excuse me, we need to get back to the period and to the times when we reward hard work, we celebrate integrity, and we appreciate merit. Until we do that, we'll continue to make laws, we continue to amend our laws, but that will just be trying to pad over
the Nigerian judiciary also needs more buildings, state-of-the-art buildings. They need to increase the salaries and benefits of Nigerian judges, and then you also need to add more judges to the bench.
All right. Samuel is calling in from
forget also
Enugu.
the law enforcement.
Is Samuel still on the line? Samuel from Enugu, hello. Samuel from Enugu. Samuel from Enugu, hello.
Hello?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hello?
Samuel, go right ahead.
Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, go on.
Hello?
Well, let me just quickly repeat this. We said once you see your name appear on screen, it means your call is through to the studio, and I'm sure you can see Samuel, your name is written there. However, if you're still having challenges communicating, all right. Yes. Oh,
FATF.
FATF.
Yes.
Oh. Financial Action Task Force. FATF is the abbreviation. It's Financial Action Task Force. It is the Financial Action Task Force. It is a non-governmental body. Task Force. Task Force. Yes. Pardon?
Grey list.
Grey list is the list of jurisdictions under monitoring. Under monitoring. Yes.
All right.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I like this man. Thank you very much.
You should have a background in
yes. Can we talk?
I was
talking about academics.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
was going to respond to or give, I think it was Umar or somebody who called and asked what the actual tangible benefits of getting off this grey list Peter to the ordinary person.
Yes.
I was going to say that now the confidence, if we are able to sustain this over time, the confidence of investors will improve. Foreign direct investment will come. With transparency and accountability within the system, people will be more encouraged to invest here, run their businesses here, create jobs, and the trickle-down benefit for the ordinary man, that's my point now, for the ordinary man would be evident. So it's something that if we're able to sustain, and I believe we should be able to sustain it, staying off the grey list, the Nigerian people and the Nigerian state will benefit.
Yes. And again, it's important to note that in the course of exiting the grey list, we had a lot of measures put in place, a lot of mitigation measures put in place. Over time, the fruits, the benefits of those measures will begin to come out. One of the things that you will see is an improved investigation and prosecution, because the capacity of investigators, the capacity of analysts, and the capacity of the judges were also built in the course of this. So you begin to see more punishments coming, and then those punishments will deter committing these crimes. So even the corruption, the terrorism, the drug trafficking, and other predicate offenses will begin to come down. And when they begin to come down, those funds that were dissipated abroad will begin to be applied into infrastructural development, healthcare, and other benefits that will directly affect the life of the common man.
All right, we have Kefas on the line from Gwagwalada. Kefas, go ahead. Kefas from Gwagwalada. Hello, Kefas. Right, go on with your question or comment.
I would like the gentleman with the suit, with the black suit, would like to hear more from him.
That should be okay, Kevin. That would be Kelvin, right? Yes, what would you like to hear from him? Right.
Yes. We are getting more lectures than any other. I'm sorry to say that. So we'd like to hear from him more.
Yes, what specifically would you like him to talk about with regard to the issue at stake? Okay. He probably likes
I was just going to say that everyone on this table has contributed immensely to this conversation. Very rich conversation we've had tonight. And I don't think I've contributed better than anybody here on this table tonight. But, it's important to note that, one of the benefits of reduced borrowing spreads from, exiting the grey list and reducing that country risk premium is that what the government has as a debt servicing that it has to pay will, over time, gradually begin to reduce. And the impact of that shows in what they call the yield curve differential, the difference between your inflation to interest yield curve. And that impacts on your, trimester of inflation, interest rates, and exchange rates. As that interest rate begins to come down, the cost of funds to companies begin to come down. It increases production in the real sector. I'm not talking about risk-free money that, banks pack with the central bank to earn RFR. I'm talking about actual capital that goes to the private sector because of the cost of funds that they borrow to produce real production. Employment improves. When your real production increases, what happens typically is that your inflation rate begins to gradually over time unwind, and the per capita income and the purchasing power parity also improves. So all these are macro indicators that begins to balance itself out over time. But it takes time. The time lag between macro and nano impacts, when you begin to see macro improvement like you're saying in Nigeria, and when the man on the street begins to feel it, it's usually 60 months or 5 years. In this period, the government officials and politicians need to show example. In my view today, monetary policy has done well, but there's fiscal recklessness. And the example that the average Nigerian politician has shown the people and has asked them to say, okay, let's be patient for 5 years and wait to see the impact of these macro improvements, has been nothing to write home about.
All right, we have just a few more minutes to wind down, and so the question is, what must Nigeria do to avoid relisting? Let's start with Dr. Akinshiju. What should we do? And I will still get, when I get to Wunda Okuku, I'll still raise the matter of citizens' engagement. Right. So let's hear you.
I think it's still more about compliance, about a culture of integrity in all we do. Because when a jurisdiction is tainted, it's not just about the brand of that jurisdiction. It is also about the individuals within that system that are economic agents. So wherefore we know that some individuals are naturally antisocial, there should be a general commitment to discipline, to appreciation and obedience to processes. Of course, over time, we keep talking about corruption. And we cast corruption as one distant culture. But perhaps we should also start looking at corruption as inherent, in the average Nigerian. So to a large extent, I think the whole thing about the grey list itself is about compliance. It's about understanding processes, about being obedient to processes and not cutting corners. So if individuals, can make commitments to those values, I think to a large extent, we would be able to sustain not just our exit, but of course our staying out of that possible territory.
All right.
So leaving everybody at the mercy of attitudinal change is one of the places where I always have an issue.
Right.
I give a very simple example. I like to talk illustrations. Now, if anybody who drives the red light in Nigeria is penalized by maybe made to not to drive for 6 months or made to pay a particular amount of money when they are coming back for their registration of their car and things like that. One, the road safety or road safety will make more money for the government, and two, that will make the person think twice in committing that crime the next time. So my point still remains that until we twist people, let's even go back to the story of creation. God created the Garden of Eden and told man, out of all these things, but this one do not. The same, he left and man went. So man by nature likes to break laws. So the only way to make man not to break laws is to create things that will stop man from breaking laws.
And not just appeal to conscience.
No, not conscience. Conscience does not work most of the time because their conscience are dead. They don't even understand. So, two things. Is either they are not well informed, or two, they have refused or they don't have conscience anymore. So for me, I believe that the best way is, that's why I keep using that word, twist people to do the right thing. After a while, it becomes a culture. So it now becomes a way of life.
All right. Thank you. Kelvin.
Nigeria.
So I think one of the major drawbacks is the speed at which people get judgments in Nigeria and the sanctity of contracts. I still maintain that we need to create judicial independence. Independence for funding judiciary, and the Nigerian government needs to treat the judiciary better. The courts are overloaded. If you look at the dockets on the cases of a lot of judges on a typical court day, you will feel sorry for them. Some courts have lights go off, no AC. The clerical system is manual. It's not automated. You need to increase their salaries, build more courts, appoint more people to the bench. Let there be swiftness with dispensing justice. That has a serious impact on investment, because one of the metrics by which, not just FPIs, long-term foreign institutional capital used to assess if they should come into a country is how quick do they get justice dispensed, and are they sanctity of contracts. So this is a very important area we need to focus on to drive investors, long-term capital into Nigeria.
All right. John Okodi.
I agree with all they have said, but I also want to state that we got to this point because of compliance and commitment. So we should continue with compliance to rules. There should be innovation to improve on where we are now. And in law enforcement, there should be consequences. No matter how seemingly insignificant the infraction is, there are penalties for infractions. There should be consequences to serve as deterrent. That way, we would remain off the list.
All right.
Yes, I think our perception of the grey list itself need to be a bit mellowed down. It's not just all bad. It has afforded us the opportunity to reform our systems. So it's an opportunity that we have utilized well. And to sustain it, we need to continually reinvigorate our systems. We also need to continue to strengthen our collaborative mechanism. Synergy needs to be built. It has been built. So how do we sustain that synergy that has been built amongst all the institutions, including the National Assembly, including the judiciary and the law enforcement and regulators? We all need to work together. Yes, I agree that we need to impose dissuasive sanctions. Yes, we need to take compliance as a culture, yes. But we also need to improve our record keeping. We need to keep our records properly. And we also need to pay attention to statistics and databases. There are a lot of things that we do that are actually within the standard, but we cannot demonstrate them because we do not have those databases, we do not have those records, we do not have those statistics. So we also pay more attention to our record keeping. But invariably, it is still in us to sustain it. All hands must be on deck to make sure that we sustain the gains of the grey list.
Right. And it is on that note we must leave this conversation. As I always say, one program can take care of all the issues. So I'd like to thank our guest tonight, Felix Obiamalu, General Counsel, Legal Services Sector, the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, NFIU. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right.
It was a pleasure.
Right.
I enjoyed myself.
Right. John Okodi, Divisional Head, Education and Community Engagement Division, ICPC, as the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other offenses.
Other related offenses.
Other related offenses. And so ICPC.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being
Thank you for having me.
Right.
Thank you.
Kelvin Emmanuel, economist, it's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for being here
Thank
tonight.
you so much for having me.
Thank you
a privilege.
very much. Same goes for Ogbonna Okuku. It's a pleasure to see you on this program again. It's been a while, I believe. Thank you for being here tonight.
All right, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And Dr. Nia Kishiju, almost a family member here with us. So thank you once again for availing us of your thoughts and your times on the issues tonight. Thank you.
It's a pleasure as always. Thanks for having me.
And to all of you who called in and stayed with us so far, thank you for being part of this program. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.